Hi, welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Kirya Traber, curator in residence with Hi-ARTS. I am a light brown skin femme woman with big hoop earrings on, a yellowish top. Behind me is a pink chair, and there are some plants on shelves on the wall behind me. Today, we're lucky to have interpretation, ASL interpretation, by Brandon Kazan Maddox, and a little bit about Hi-ARTS. Hi-ARTS is a leading organization within the urban arts movement. For 20 years, Hi-ARTS has consistently broken new ground, advancing urban art by empowering artists to develop bold new works while creating a lasting and positive impact on urban communities. Our work is focused on serving as an incubation, development, and production space for new and innovative works, facilitating educational programs and opportunities that increase access and diversity in the arts, and working through the arts and across sectors to address key issues impacting our communities. And today we're really excited to reveal in a way Skylab, which is our new virtual residency program for artists who are interested in developing work beyond the four walls of a traditional studio or theater space. As an incubation and innovation space, Skylab allows artists with a community engaged practice rooted in performance to take their ideas to the next stage through a remote development process. And we're introducing this by way of having a really privileged conversation with our inaugural Skylab artist in residence, Ebony Noelle Golden. Um, Ebony is an artist, scholar, and culture strategist from Houston, Texas, currently based in Harlem. She devises site specific ceremonies, live art installations, creative collaborations, and arts experiments that explore and radically imagine viable strategies for collective Black liberation. And if that weren't enough, we are joined by her friend and collaborator, Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Alexis is a queer Black troublemaker and a Black feminist love evangelist and an aspirational cousin to sentient beings. Her work in this lifetime is to facilitate infinite, unstoppable ancestral love in practice. Welcome, Ebony and Alexis.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Yes, so grateful to be here.
And I'm, trying not to fangirl too much because I'm a follower of both of your work, Ebony in the performance space and Alexis in the literary space. So for those who don't know, you, as your bio said, have these great connections to ancestral practice, and that shows up in the world often as text. And then Ebony, your work shows up most often in the world as performance. I'm curious about your connection and relationship as artists in different mediums, your shared values and practices. What's the story of your collaborative relationship? How did you come to work together, and how are you working together now?
Alexis, I want you to talk first, please.
I would love to. I would love to. Our relationship is an ongoing miracle. It is many years in the making within this lifetime and many lifetimes in the making. And so, what is it? Maybe 15 years ago? We
It was longer. It was, I've been
20
here
years ago?
13 years. It's closer to 20.
Wow. Wow. So like, yeah, we grew up in this. So we met each other in Durham, North Carolina. And I mean, really, really connected around poetry very early in our friendship. But what I'll say to me is a defining experience of our creative collaboration for me is getting to collaborate in real time as the co-chairs of an artistic response committee that is part of Ubuntu, which is a women of color survivor-led coalition to end gendered violence that really rose up in Durham in response to the Duke Lacrosse rape case. And it was Kai Lumumba Barrow, another one of our loved ones, favorite artists, who said, I want an artistic response to this violence. And Ebony and I were the people who were like, we will, we will hold the space, you know, we will hold the space of this ongoing response. And so what that meant, and the things that it was our impulse to do at that moment, I think still shape our collaboration to this very second. Because what did we do? We said, okay, we want to go back to the poetry of Asha Bandale and Ntozake Shange and Audre Lorde, and we want to create performative versions of those works for people to be able to think through what we're responding to, which is the pervasive sexual violence that exists in this society. And we're still returning to texts, right? We're still returning to texts from those, from our foremothers to this very moment. We knew that what we needed to do had to be accessible to all of our communities. We knew that it had to engage play and ceremony. We engaged space very particularly. I remember us in the sanctuary of the first Black church in Durham, which is Hayti, which is actually right out my window right now, where I'm sitting. And we were also engaging in adaptation of technology at the same time, because I don't know how many blogs we created, Ebony.
Blogs on blogs on blogs.
Blogs on blogs. It was like every idea we had, we wanted it to be digitally accessible at the same time that it was very grounded in physical space. I mean, all the things I'm saying can describe the work in this moment right now. And so I feel like we were cultivating that, and we were cultivating that because we were just continuing to ask ourselves the question, what does our community need right now? And what do we have? The number one thing that we had is our ancestral memory and our Black feminist traditions of people who have been responding to all sorts of crises, but also responding to the huge, deep love they and we have for our communities creatively for so long.
And let's bring the name of this current project. Oh, go ahead, Ebony, sorry.
That was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But more like 17 years ago, we were both members of Spirit House.
Mm-hmm.
We are both we are
currently members of Spirit House. Yeah.
That preceded the Duke Lacrosse and the National Day of Truth Telling work that we did deeply for an extended period of time.
Yes.
So it was that as a major collaboration, but before that it was this, you know, this cultural collaboration through Spirit House and the work of Spirit House that took us to the United States Social Forum, that took in Atlanta and Detroit, that took us, and I don't know if you went, Alexis, physically, but you were there intellectually and spiritually, to Highlander and Alternate Roots. Well, you did, I know you did come to Roots Week. So yeah. it was, you know, I think it's important to say that I believe that we would have met each other and you know, worked together anyway, but Spirit House as a cultural elay, if you will, as an artistic elay and a political, you know, portal space, brings all kinds of folks, magnetizes to that energy, that organization, and we become family.
Yes.
So we go quickly from being people who are doing interesting things in Durham to a family. We call ourselves Tribe, and there is a lot of work in that. And I think I'll say, just, you know, just as a bridge to what does that have to do with now, you know, within Spirit House, there are so many brilliant folks, right? And as a person who calls Durham a home, but lives in New York City and came here for more school and other adventures, you know, it has been important for me to stay connected to home. And when I think about Alexis, I think about home, right? You know, just period, point blank. And that in a home in a rigorous way, in a layered and textured way. You know, home is not just structures, but it's people and what people have taught you and what people have brought you and how people have healed you, whether they were sitting next to you or not, you know? And that to me is, I think, critical, because collaboration, especially among folks that walk and move in the world like Alexis and I, it starts with the project, right? It's like, oh, you're cool, you're dope. Oh, I think you're cool and dope. Let's do cool, dope things together. And there is layers and layers and layers of depth and growth and shift and change that have gone into why, talking about fangirl. I mean, Alexis is a dear friend and I'm a fan, right? And also Alexis is my teacher, you know, among you know, all of the other things too. So there is an accountability that's rooted in this collaboration. That's just like, I see how people do art in New York City. They're not doing that to my sister. If I say you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a layer of expectation that isn't about art making. It's about being in family. And that is the collaboration is not the art. The collaboration is family first. And then, because people in family do all kinds of things, how can I be in right relationship with a family member who has this movement work in the world? Well, I want to just see that movement work in the world be more and more and more. How can I do that? Well, Alexis is prolific. And so it was 1 book, then 2 books, then 3 books, which today I was listening to a podcast you posted where you said, actually, this is not a trilogy. It's a triptych of books that happen to all have been published by these people, but they are doing lots of different works and ceremonies, right? So, well, because Alexis keeps writing books, you know, what else? Why should I do anything else but figure out a way to continue to have people engage these ceremonies, these textual ceremonies? What else do I need to do as a performer, as a maker of things? Why? You know?
Incredible.
So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that kind of thing is a lot of things. And
it's profound. It's profound.
But mostly what you're grounding, which is apparent in your bios and anyone who follows your work, is that, as you just said, Ebony, it's not art for art's sake. It's art as home, as political home, as site of practicing new ways of thought, of new ways of being in relationship with each other. Art is a practice space as much as it is about the creative craft. I want to ground us a little bit in this current work, in the name of that you're developing through Skylab. We'll talk in another conversation about some of the specifics about what it means right now to develop in this virtual laboratory. But one of the things that you said about it in conversations that we've had, Ebony, is calling it a work of, or in the lineage of, Black Eco-feminism, which is something that sort of intuitively makes a lot of sense and aligns for me, but it's not a framing that I think we're often given in the popular discourse. So I'm curious a little bit more about what this Black ecofeminism might mean to you. I want to just offer a little bit. I got to peek at some text that Alexis wrote about June Jordan, who developed these plans for a skyrise in Harlem that I had never heard of. An incredible, full, utopian, in the complex sense of that word, vision for a redevelopment of this area that was then, through means that we can talk about maybe or not, co-opted by a sort of a white supremacist male gaze. But the plan itself has these really visionary ideas about space and place as a site of reinvention, reimagining of relationships, of Black identity. And you argue, Alexis, of queerness, of all of that. So what about Black places and spaces? What about this Black ecofeminism? Where did that start to become a sort of site of work for you both? What does it mean right now in this work that you're working on? how might we ground ourselves in that if it's a new term for us?
I will start with this. So, I mean, again, my understanding of these concepts, like I wouldn't have known about June Jordan Skyrise if Alexis didn't tell me about this like a month and a half ago. Right? We weren't even talking about this project when Alexis mentioned that and was like, oh, and here are all of these things you should read, right? Here's your medicine. There's always a prescription of a book with Alexis. And so this is the thing, right? And I love you for it, dear one. But here's the thing, like, you know, Kirya, I'm looking up and out, but I really should be like looking right here. But I need to look in space. But here's the thing I want to say. As a person who finds the theater building as not less and less critical and important for political reasons, we have to complicate these institutional spaces. And I mean buildings and structures. We must. Theater is one of them, but I also think that we also need to complicate this in terms of higher, quote unquote, higher education spaces. Our ways of liberation don't fit inside of them, don't fit on those stages. They can be, something can happen there, but the fullness, the grandness, the radicality of what it means for a Black woman, femme, gender non-conforming person, human, to be fully liberated in a rigorous way, those institutions don't deserve the magnitude of that, if you ask me. They can participate as allies and accomplices, but really that work of being a liberated Black woman, for me and my identity, deserves to be with the trees and the stars and the ocean and the garden and the river. And we have to go outside in a way where people can be there and be safe and be comfortable and be in their own skin and be pushed and nourished and nurtured to new awakenings and pathways.
So liberation, not just from white institution as an idea, but the physical parts of institution.
The physical, all of the political things that get mapped onto that, yes, and. But I need for this Black womanness, this Black liberationness to be in the daylight.
Yeah.
And what that means for me is to put work on streets and public spaces and gardens and parking lots, you know? So to bring all of that to bear, when June Jordan says, no more sharp edges, that is an architectural mandate, but it's also a political and an economic mandate, right? No more sharp edges.
We had a little technical difficulty, but we're going to get right back into it. Ebony, please continue.
Yeah, so, you know, the thing that I want to continue to be investigating in this work with the environment, I would say the environment, the ecology, Blackness, liberation, Black feminism, for me, it has to happen in public spaces, you know, the investigation, the research, the conversations, and the practices. And I think about this in terms of historically and in contemporary, in this contemporary moment, what it means for groups of people to move together in ceremony, in protest, in vision, all of that to me is my entry point and my thought process into what is a Black feminist ecological or environmental justice. It's that that communal moving in all of our abilities and capacities and ways to get from where we are to where we want to be. And I just, and I'll also say that Alexis's work, for me, as someone that just like wants to do that all the time, wants to be, let's process with a flag and some water and a flower, literally all the time.
Yes.
It's like the work asks us to travel dimensions, travel in our understanding of what community and family can be, travel in our own discomfort, through our own discomfort. So there is kind of an astral projection that happens for me when I am engaging Alexis's text in a deep and profound way. And then asks me, it's basically, the work says, get up, girl, and go do something. And so, and to the way that our familial relationship started, it's like, but don't go by yourself. Get up and move, but move with your people. Yes. And that, to me, I think, and when we think about the trees moving with us, and oceans moving with us, and animals moving with us, and other people moving with us, that is a Black feminist ecosystemic politic and poetic that I want to continue to be studying forever, 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 forever. Thus saith the Lord,
Yeah, thus saith the Lord. And thus saith June Jordan, because so Alexis DeVoe interviewed June Jordan for Essence Magazine. And by the way, Alexis DeVoe and June Jordan, lifelong friends and collaborators with each other. So they did this interview in June Jordan's kitchen, and June Jordan said poetry is housework, right? And this question of what it is to be at home on the planet, I mean, June Jordan also said in her essay, The Difficult Miracle of Black Poetry in America, something like a sonnet for Phyllis Wheatley, she said a poet is someone at home. How could there be Black poets in America, right? That's the founding question of that essay, which is one of my favorite essays, which actually is the first essay I ever wrote about in college. Anyway, but interestingly enough, June Jordan went to Barnard College, which is that college where I wrote that essay, which also is the place where the first person I ever heard say Black Eco-feminism, Chelsea Frazier, Dr. Chelsea Frazier, who is, that I know of, the scholar on this that schooled me that was even a term, really is drawing on something that I never would have named it as ecofeminism. I didn't know that was a available name, but I definitely knew that Alexis DeVoe and Gwendolyn Hardwick were having salons in their living room talking about what is it for us to be at home. At those salons, they were talking about what's the nuclear crisis mean for Black communities, right? There's specifically, there's not been a separation between what some would now call environmentalism or ecofeminism and a very long project of homefulness that is expansive beyond planetary. I mean, it's planetary, but also cosmic, that you'll see it everywhere. It's why Homegirls, a Black feminist anthology, is called Homegirls. It's all about what is it to be at home, which is an environmental question, right? That is literally the question of environment. So yeah, I would say that's exactly what Ebony is saying, is that it is wonderful to have the scholarly work that puts the different things together, and that we got names for things, and things can be accessible and visible in different ways. But for sure, I know that in our collaboration, it's coming from the same thing, same reason. Spirit House is our cultural and political home. What is it about? What's the most creative thing about being part of Spirit House? It's creating the family that is Spirit House. It's how can we be at home together? How can we actually create, at the scale of our relationships with each other, a life-giving, sustainable, beautiful home? And yeah, so I would say that's what Black ecofeminism is to me. And just shout out to Chelsea Frazier, because if you want to see, if you want to see that scholarly lineage and all of that. I celebrate it. I celebrate it. And I'm grateful that, I'm just grateful that I get to be at home in the practice of Black feminism. Yeah.
I think, you know, in a way, I feel personally that we're we're in a moment of opportunity, um, because right now, so we're recording this on August 21st of, of 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, right? And which there's also social upheaval in this country, in which we are seeing fires again raging through California. We are seeing, you know, the evidence of ecological destruction is all around us, while we are also like having this viral threat to human existence. In a way, I am grateful to be rediscovering these texts right now about what is home. And as you ask in some of your work, particularly in your triptych, um, and I'll get the names of all of these. Spill, Scenes of Black Feminist Fugitivity, M, Archive, After the End of the World, and Dub, Finding Ceremony. You're really experimenting, and not only with form in terms of mixing together narrative, poetics, theory, but also experimenting in sense of human identity, not just Black woman identity, not just queer person identity, but humanness, even of itself. You imagined in these texts, and you source other people who have done similar, the end of the world, the end of framing ourselves in the way that we have, and using our language and our artistry, our poetics and poesis to really just completely blow apart and invite a new sense of interaction, internal process, definition of even like where our body begins and ends. And that's all, you know, lovely to read and sit back in my armchair at any point to just sort of take in the poetry and the beauty of your language. But now in this moment, it feels like a guidebook. It feels like, okay, here's something. There's literally a section called instructions, which I'm really grateful for. So I'm curious, looking at your own work now and the way you think about the use of this work, what's how are you applying this now in this moment of seeming impending apocalypse? Or how might you recommend we apply some of these things? What does it mean in our actual lives to live some of these texts?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say, you know, Ebony spoke about astral travel. Like I feel like that the work calls us to astral travel, or to travel through the universe. I feel like that was happening the entire time I was writing. It was just like, where are we? Well, this is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. This is what I can hear. This is what I can perceive. And I would say that the way that I continue to be guided by the work is I allow it to meet me where I am. So I see it as an ongoing oracle practice. Just yesterday, I was like, what's my oracle question? What's my number? I just opened that page of the book and I was like, oh, that is what I needed to know for today, right? And so I think that in the same way that I agree with what you're saying, that it's not necessarily just to sit back in our chair and let it pass over us. As Ebony was saying, the fact that it does seem to instruct, it does seem to be like, okay, this is active. That's absolutely how I felt the entire time, and how I still feel. I don't relate to the triptych as something that, well, I figured something out, then I just told the people, and I already know, so now they can know it too. Sometimes I write down the things I know just to tell the other people, and that's great. That is not what this work is at all. This is the stuff that I do not know. This is the energetic ceremony for continuing to be able to be present. And so that's how I engage it. That's why it's such a huge gift for me that Ebony will allow me to show up to meet my own work, on the in the street, just on a day, like embodied. It's such an incredible reflection because there has never been a time where collaborating with Ebony in performative iterations that engage this work where I have not been like, yes, that's exactly what I needed to learn today. I wasn't gonna know it. I wasn't gonna be able to perceive it. Somebody might be saying words that I wrote years ago, but it's not, it's actually meeting what my consciousness needs in this very moment. So I would say that there are content reasons that you're saying what you're saying, Kirya. Like there are words that it says in the book that are like, it's really talking about epidemic and people not be able to touch each other's hands. Like it's really talking about these things content-wise. But I think it's actually the form that causes it to be able to meet us in the present moment, whatever the present moment is. Because we are having a breakthrough always. We are having to face contradiction always. No matter when you open up the book, there's contradiction that you're facing, there's breakthrough that you're having, whether you realize you're having it or not, remains to be seen. And that's why the way that Ebony relates to ceremony, relates to community, relates to practice is the most appropriate way to engage the work, because we can actually have the ceremony. So yeah, so I'm so grateful because I'm learning the most. I feel like I'm learning the most from In the Name Of and its iterations. I feel like it's this huge gift because it's like, what do I really wonder? And I could spend a whole year wondering it. And then that is the part of the frame for what I get to actually see and hear and learn from and witness. It's huge. So yeah, my instruction would be, engage it as Oracle, if ideally at and through In the Name Of, right? Like ideally engage it in that way. If for some reason you don't have access to that, then just open up to whatever page. People have come up to me again and again and been like, your book was sitting here and I opened to a random page, like, what is this? And they'll be like, how did you know? Why are you in my business? Why does it say the stuff that's going on in my life? And I'm like, it's you meeting your own intuition, because all I did was meet my own intuition and just document it and do the discernment work to say which part of this is to be shareable with the community and which part of this is just like, Alexis, you need to go walk over there, right? I had to parse that and discern that. But it is, for me, it is an archive, all of it, but it's more a technology than an archive even, because what it's asking for is it's asking for us to know that we have access to the ceremony that will give us what we need right now, which we may not have known we needed 15 minutes ago. So I see it as a technology even more than I see it as an archive, even though it is also an archive.
It's a practice.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm gonna take advantage of this moment to ask a personal sort of question about this. When you talk about meeting your own intuition in this work, I mean, that is something that I as an artist as well, I struggle, I think, and I think there are ways that some of your writing might articulate as well, that my judgment or skepticism around my own intuition might come from framings and systems that came from outside, even an imagination of my body as fully human, my mind, structure as fully, intellectually capable, right? So I doubt myself. I'm curious, in your own practice, you do meet your own intuition, you name that, you speak to that, and there is literal poetry in this work, and it's beautifully laid out on the page even, right? There's an artistry that we might more associate with intuitive listening and response. And also, you are a scholar and you do research and you do There's a passage even here in the note where you talk about listening to your ancestors and your lineage, and then you say relatives outside what we understand to be human species had some storytelling and untelling to do as well. And then you speak about the bottom of the ocean, and you speak about phylogenous and so on and so forth. That's researched, right? Like, you know the names of these species at the bottom of the ocean as much as you also are intuitively listening and just responding to oracle. I guess I'm wondering if there's anything you'd say about the intersection of those things, about the intellectual as we frame it in the common language, and the intuitive about the creative craft and the critical research craft.
You know, no sharp edges. You know, like I would say that they don't even have to intersect because they were not separate.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have to do, and this is the rigor, and you spoke to this in what you just said, I have to not separate them.
Yes.
Right? That's what I have to do. I don't have to bring them back together. I just have to not separate them when I sit there. Now that's more than a notion, because as you said, there's these constructs, there's the judgment, the violence, there's the fear, the sharp edges I have erected to try to protect myself from all of that, right? But at the end of the day, or more specifically at the beginning of the day, because that's when I write, at the beginning of the day, they're not separate. So like this morning, I was looking outside. Can you believe that there's like pieces of rockets orbiting our planet just like that you can see without a telescope? Like a piece of a rocket that Japan had launched a satellite from in 2003 went by like out the window, and I saw it, and I took out my sky app and was like, what? Because I was just trying to look at Venus, which is very beautiful in the morning. So why did that happen? Right? Like the whole situation is an oracle. And so I'm like, well, there's something for me to learn. And I learned so much looking into what was the purpose of this satellite? The story of this satellite. You know, I said I wanted to be a cousin to all sentient beings, but now I'm realizing I'm related to like space litter, because that rocket, it's called an expended rocket body. It is just collateral in what it took to get the satellite up. Why did they put the satellite up? They put the satellite up to look at disasters on Earth. The whole purpose of this satellite is to study disaster. But in fact, it sees a disaster, the tsunami in Japan. It was launched from Japan. And then, for reasons unknown, it goes into power saving mode. Now, evidently, it's totally powered off, or the people can't perceive any power coming from it. They don't know if it was hit by a meteorite. Anyway, so of course, I find all this out because I'm researching, because I saw some space litter. But and then what I had to allow myself to understand is this relationship between this expended rocket body and this satellite that has powered herself down, I'll say her, is exactly what I needed to meditate on about my relationship to my father, who has passed away, expended rocket body, and who launched me into space for a purpose. I mean, I was just going in like, her purpose is to look at the disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But she said no. Can you believe the people say the pictures that she sent back were too blurry for them to even use? And I'm sitting here blurred with my tears, crying, thinking about, all of this, right? Now, if you had asked me yesterday, do I think, if you had said, Alexis, what's the intersection between your father and expended rocket body H-A11, I would have been like, that has not, I don't even know what that is. Turns out there's no separation. Ultimately, ultimately, all of it is just all of it. So yeah, so that's what I would say. I would say that when I doubt myself, exactly, Kirya, exactly what you said. I feel like I'm separate. When I'm trusting my intuition, I know that I'm deeply related, period. And so I write from that place, or at least what I write from that place, I feel is the most useful of what I write. You know, sometimes I write other stuff where I'm just venting about how separate I feel. That is not
Sure.
what I consider, you know, that's part of the discernment. What was for my process, what I needed to go through, and then what was the part of my process that I also needed to have that is for us, that is the part to share. So, so yeah, I would say that my research is not separate from my intuition. It's completely guided by my intuition. It just happens to be that my intuition consistently brings me to Black women, consistently, right? And that's not a coincidence. That's because that's exactly what I need. However, so also do I need to know about this non-functioning satellite that I had never heard of yesterday. And yeah, it's not a sharp edge, it's round. It's literally orbiting us right now.
Thank you so much. I mean, now I'm gonna go Google that later. Ebony, there's a lot there that I'm sure you could respond to and take us on many other orbits. I want to offer a little bit also. So, in the name of, I didn't mention is a commission by the Apollo Theater, and there are other folks involved as well. And feel free to name who else. You're working, as we've discussed already, inspired by this triptych. By Alexis and other sources. And you're working in this moment of global pandemic, social upheaval, ecological collapse, et cetera. That's led you to do some virtual process in the beginning. I'm curious, and you are envisioning this outside of physical institution, physical space, ceremony, site specific in Harlem in 2021, which, depending on who you read and follow, will still be in the midst of a global pandemic in that moment as well. So I'm curious about how this moment is shifting the needs of the work, or the needs that are driving the making of this work, and what's showing up for you in your creative practice right now.
Yeah, so you know, this question keeps coming up, and I wanna say first that I've never made a work outside of a pandemic.
Mm.
I've just
Asha.
been making work inside of different types of pandemics,
Mm-hmm.
pandemonium, chaos, rupture, breakdown, disaster, forever. You know, like that is the state of this country in many ways. Finding a way outside of that is the necessary, you know, work for me. But the default of what the you know, the propelling of a certain type of, you know, disruption and rupture and chaos is is what I'm used to working through. Is really, you know, I want to be visionary, but the fact is I am a human in this lifetime with the circumstances and the environments that are impacting how I breathe every day. It is also my work to figure out another way to breathe, but I'm here where I am dealing with what I'm dealing with now. The thing about making the work that I think is in this moment that's so generative is the fact that everybody does not have to be beholden to the systems and structures of making theater in New York City. I don't have to be beholden to that. I'm working with people literally right now who are in Ghana, North Carolina, who are in Texas, back just got back from Portland. Like, people are Arkansas. People are all over the place, always all over the place, and to try to pinpoint them to be here And now in real time, it's very hard to do given all of what we know is happening in the world. Storytelling is an ancient technology. It does not require us to be in the same space, right? It really doesn't. The way that I have been able to dive into my practice is to be very roots based, very roots focused. None of it exists without story. And because the work is also couldn't exist without Alexis writing these books, you know, it's very important for us to understand source material, right? This is the spirit work that is guiding, not just dance now 5, 6, 7, 8, say this for 2 seconds and then do that. But it's like, what does the body have to access? What does the body have to remember in order to build a world that these books are asking us to build? What is the foundation of that? You know, the work is dealing with a central question. What is a Black feminist, how does a Black feminist world thrive after the end of this world, which is really rooted in death and destruction and chaos and pandemic? And so you need to do that at home. You need to do homework. Back to what Alexis said. You know, the thing about getting in the studio and having all of that kicked up and swirled around, really, you should have a whole medic team, a spiritual medic team, first responders, to ask people to do, as Dr. Tier has taught us, decrudding in space with other people, exfoliating, metabolizing pain and trauma, and then saying, now do this 5, 6, 7, 8 kickball change, twirl, twirl. It's not actually the most responsible way to start. The work requires an internal and a personal and an intimate life practice that is about what you're doing when we're not looking. I don't need you to twirl for me. I never do. But if you are really invested in telling a story and embodying a story, singing a story that is about a Black feminist thrival, then you better be doing work at home. You know, this is not for show. So the ceremony is a slice in the public processional ceremony is a moment along an infinite amount of, you know, movings and occurrences where we show and share a reflection of what the deep work has been. So now I don't want to make work in any other way. To get to the point, Kirya, well, this is all the point. Kirya, I do not want to make work that requires us to jump up and get in bed with each other before we actually know each other. I believe in making slow art. And to your point about what it means to trust yourself and have intuition, to tell a producer, or presenter, colleague, collaborator, this requires you to be in ceremony with yourself, separate from me, separate from rehearsal process for a year or 2. I don't need to even know what you're doing over there, but I will know the effects of it when you show up here. We skip that. This is not, you know, swipe right, swipe left art. This is deep intimacy that isn't just about proximity. It is about intimacy. And intimacy is a personal journey that hopefully, maybe if you choose to, you share moments of that, but it's not about a giving over or a giving in. And this book, and not just the book, you know, this is the thing. I also am very privileged to actually know Alexis, and you know, and so it's not just the books, it's the life practice. So that's what people are really getting a little glimpse into. It's what it means to wake up in the morning, watch rocket pieces fly by, and then write. Every day, something is flying by. Every day, something is happening. Every day we're writing ourselves back into breath, back into visibility, back into connection, back into being. And we're remembering how our lineages and ancestors have done that, and how they will do that in the future, how our ancestors would do it in the future, right? So it's a practice that is the alignment. It's not about, here's the thing, and I have to say this because I think, you get to say, oh, Hi-ARTS is doing this, I'm doing this at Hi-ARTS, I'm doing this at the Apollo, boop, 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 bop, bop, bop. And people think you know something. And people think, oh, she's important because the Apollo says and Hi-ARTS says. But this is the thing. If you really, really read these books, if you really study the holistic ways in which just this one June Jordan piece on the Skyrise work, right? All of that is fleeting. All of that, it can be fleeting. Somebody can think you hot one day and not the next. They can understand you and find you and find you outside of the realms of comprehension the next second. Something else needs to ground you. Something else needs to ground what you're thinking and what you're asking for and what you are investigating. And so I'm going away from your question because I want to say how, like, my practice is what Alexis has talked about many times. Sylvia Winters, M. Jackie Alexander, and Hortense Spillers wrote texts that are the ancestors to these three books. Well, have you read anything? This is me talking to me, right? Through Alexis's voice. Have you read anything by them? Do you know pedagogies of crossing? Do you know what it means to make an American grammar? Do you know anything about, do you have a proximity and an intimacy to the things that are important to how these books got here? Well, I have to say some, maybe, no, I don't know, yes, no, maybe so, right? And then get about the business of doing the intimacy work with the archive that you say is saving your life and giving you a reason to make art. Now, Alexis, I don't have to say that literally. The work says that, the practice says that. And that is, to be honest, what Skylab and this moment of breakthrough, which I think we can say pandemic, we can say all of those things, but what does that really mean when you always have been in some way in relationship to a pandemic of sorts, economic, environmental, social, political? Well, it means that you keep doing what you say is your survival and your thrival practices and technologies. It's more of that. When we get to a space where we can be in physical proximity, I want to be able to show up differently, y'all. I'm still uprooting institutional theater, oppression, and practices out of my own way of being in shared spaces that are guided by Black feminist possibilities and visions, but I'm still, even now, saying, but okay, we need all of these people and all of this professionalism and all of this stuff, when I know we need a pot of greens, a pan of cornbread, something good to drink, and people to feel like they can unbutton their top button on their too tight jeans and take off their shoes and live in the world, not act the world, embody the world, and have the world that we say on the paper, in the script, in the books, is what we want, and to go on that journey. It's not a rehearsal process. It's not a production process. It is ceremony. And hopefully the theater can be an accomplice to that. But it is ceremony first.
I'm gonna pause you there only because there's a time limit to this conversation, not because I don't want you to continue. And I want to say that I have so much gratitude. I think it was during our technical break, Ebony, you were saying you were close to emotions and tears, and I am as well. Listening to you speak, I feel like there is a kind of permission you have both given me today, and I'm incredibly grateful. And just paying attention to my body, I noticed myself holding myself while you were talking you know, a sort of squeeze of affirmation. So, so much
But
has been gifted.
I'm gonna cut in and say, Kirya, you already know, right? You already know. I'm cutting in. I know the time. I looked at the thing. But I think we would be. I would feel like this was lacking if we didn't honor that. There's a reason why you're in this room, this virtual room, you know, in conversation with us. That is about the dope work that you're making. You know, like, come on now, let's not like you're doing some powerful work too.
Yeah.
In you know, in alignment with and in that is family to the work that we're doing. Right now, you're doing it. Right now. And being recognized and honored and supported. And I don't know all about what all of that means, right? But I do know I see you is what I'm saying. And I feel you. And one of the reasons why I was like, open up our process archive, whatever it is there to Kirya on purpose. Because you whenever you need it, you're gonna be in there reading and looking at stuff. And that is, I think, absolutely critical. Like Alexis has opened up her process to the universe to be like, get what you get, come and get your medicine. And that's why my work has to be in public spaces with people who identify as artists and non-artists, because freedom is not what? A secret.
It's not a secret.
Mm, mm.
It's a
Okay,
practice.
It's a practice. That's
I'm
from
getting
Alexis.
I'm getting a secret text message that we should wrap up.
Speaking of secrets.
But thank you for challenging my unnecessary humility in that moment, in that way. Just some wrap up thoughts. I want to remind the audience this gift, no sharp edges, that we're there's a call for a liberation from corners and rigid structures, even as a concept, that there's a deep interconnectivity, which you've just demonstrated, Ebony, by pulling the loop back to all of the work we're doing, all of the lineage we share, and all the ways that we're discovering new lineages together. All poetry, all art is housework, work pertaining to home and ecosystem and ecology. And speaking of home, we've got homework to do, which, among many things, may also be um, cultivating a practice for when people are not looking at us, so that when we show up in our public spaces, that work is apparent and is already in process. And I share, as you share, Ebony, a hope that when we're able to be in physical space together, we, us, the collective humanity, going through this current iteration of pandemic, which is always happening, that we're different, that we show up in different ways because we're doing our homework right now. So thank you both so much. There's more. There's going to be more in the name of. There's going to be another conversation with Hi-ARTS, and also there will be more of Ebony in many places. And you should immediately purchase all of Alexis's books. And I think there's going to be links to their work along with this video. So I want to thank again Brandon Kazan Maddox for interpretation. I want to thank Hi-ARTS for holding the virtual container for this. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for such excellent facilitation.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah, yeah. Peace, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.